Did you? Okay. Okay. Good morning, everybody. Shavua Tov. Welcome to another, what is going to be an incredible Beit Abulafia like we have not had before. We are with the distinguished Rabbi Samson and Jason Kaplan. The two of y'all have been working together. We are delighted to have this conversation. Jason, welcome. Rabbi Samson, welcome. Hi.
Hello. It's indeed a pleasure for me as well.
Wonderful.
And it's a unique opportunity to meet not only Jason, but his extended family.
Yeah, it's good. It's all in the family on these. It's fantastic. Jason, do you want to jump in here, maybe say some thanks and share a little bit of some background before we dive into our conversation?
Great. Yes. Well, first, thank you to Shoshana Cenker for hosting. Again, Beit Abulafia. You really make it work and have the conversation really flow beautifully. Rabbi Samson, thank you for joining. I was made aware of his new works in Abulafia by his student, Baruch Gordon, who has traveled to Memphis because he's from Memphis. So a small world. And incredible to make this connection. I've been able to learn on a couple of Tuesdays here and there with Rabbi Samson where he has time permitting, and he's been so generous with his time, so I also want to thank him for that. I want to read a brief bio, and then we're going to get right to it, but I want everyone to know the level of scholar that we have with us. This is on the Mizrahi.org website, and I just want to read a couple of paragraphs so everyone understands as we start the type of rabbi that we have joining us, and we're just so thankful for your time. Rabbi David Samson, one of the leading English-speaking Torah scholars in Religious Zionist movement in Israel, and educational entrepreneur. Rabbi Samson's written 6 books, but in process of writing more, most of which are the teachings of Rabbi Avram Yitzhak Kook and Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook. Rabbi Samson was born in Baltimore, Maryland, studied with Rabbi Tzvi Yehuda Kook for 12 years. The rest of the bio is talking about his really incredible entrepreneurial side of founding Arutz Sheva English Broadcasting, founding Atid nonprofit organization for youth at risk, Male Erev institutions. I'm just listing a couple, but there's about 6 or 7 here. Lone Star Language Academy in 2014, 2020, the King Solomon Academy. Presently founder and dean of Atid institutions in Israel. Just really an amazing person as a scholar and entrepreneur, and just helping not only information get to books but get to people, and that's why I've been so impressed. And amazingly enough, as I've grown in my interest in Abulafia, he's now translating Abulafia and adding his own scholarship and insights, which will make it relevant to us people, not in the academic world per se, but who would like to really implement it and gain the Torah wisdom. So with that, it was a little bit longer the bio today, but I really wanted us to understand who's joining us. And so, Shoshana, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, all of that is needed to give us really this foundation of the conversation that we're about to have because the rabbi has done some incredible work. So first, I do want to talk a little bit more, Rabbi, about your background professionally before we start diving into more Beit Abulafia and the book that you're working on and Jason's experience with Beit Abulafia too. Abulafia, pardon me. So give us a little bit more. Jason just shared some of the things. Sort of give us some reasons why you decided to join into rabbinical leadership and why Rav Kook, you're drawn to him, and this kind of parallel that I think you have between being a rabbi and an entrepreneur, if you would.
Well, I grew up in Baltimore in the 60s. And I wasn't much different than anybody else who grew up in Baltimore in the 60s. And I was in favor of love and peace and getting out of Vietnam. And that was what my life was about. And I remember in 9th grade, I was asked, what do I want to be when I grow up? And it was very clear. I said, I don't know what I want to be. I know what I don't want to be. I don't want to be a teacher. And surprise, surprise.
Just kidding.
Uh, uh, I left high school. I finished high school early at the age of 16 on condition that I would go to a yeshiva. And I really wasn't interested in a yeshiva. I was interested in getting out of America because the establishment was what people in the 60s thought it was. And I just didn't believe in America at all. I just wanted to get out. So I agreed to go to a yeshiva for a year. And then I just broken up with my girlfriend and had nothing to do. So I decided to learn Torah instead, and I would just sit there for like a whole year and just learn day and night and day and night. And uh, I had planned to continue at Hebrew University and to continue in marine biology. But I found it so fascinating that I decided to push it off another year, and then another year, and another year. And then, like, after 13 years in Merkaz Arav, it didn't seem that practical to finally go to Hebrew University. And you just kind of develop into a teacher. And then I was a ninth grade teacher in Merkaz Arav for another 15 years. And I don't think that anything was really planned. It just kind of happened.
Right. It's sort of like, the whole man plans and God laughs, but you never know where the journey is going to take you. And here you are. So Jason, you had mentioned that you had been able to connect with Rabbi Samson through a Memphis connection and that you guys have worked together a little bit. Can you talk a little bit about what you've gained from meeting with Rabbi Samson over Zoom? Have you done a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I'll just highlight that not that we work together, but I just worked on listening.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, I just want to
Right.
clarify. I've been really
Right.
student
Sorry.
for the time. No, it's okay. I just wanted to again just thank Rabbi Samson for this breadth of knowledge, and I've been able to make a connection with Abulafia and permutations of notes and permutations of letters, which are called sarufim. But that's the extent of my scholarly skill. So I would just say what we're going to hear on this program is, to me, and this is all in potential. I don't want to oversell this, but in potential, I think Rabbi Samson is going to potentially open up Hebrew and English-speaking Jewish world and beyond to the great light of Abulafia. And so that's why it's just such an amazing blessing and opportunity, this particular session. We've had wonderful guests. I think in terms of alignment with the mission of this Zoom program, Rabbi Samson's really going to expand for a lot of people this access. So that's what we've been able to do: study on Tuesdays, look at his writings, and just for me to confirm, Rabbi Samson, you really are doing something so unique. So, and I'm excited to hear more from him.
Me too. Before we get back to Abulafia, Rabbi, I think that a lot of people are they're familiar with Rav Kook, and that's been one of the leaders that you've really put a lot of effort into studying. I think it's fair to say that he's a towering figure, right, of Jewish leadership. Can you talk briefly before we jump back into Abulafia about his impact and how it's continued through to today?
Wow, that's like uh, a doozy of a question.
I know, and, and
And
and you only have 1 minute, by the way. Go. No.
and if I have to, like, I feel like, a little kid going into a candy store and having to choose one candy, and it's like not an easy thing. But if I have to choose one concept of Rav Kook, I think there is one concept that depicts everything that Rav Kook is saying. And that is the understanding that spiritualism and materialism are not at ends, and they're mutually compatible and symbiotic, something that Abulafia also is very follows in that thought. And in order to really do properly the meditations of Abulafia, you also have to be within that frame of mind. Now, that has a lot of ramifications. The most obvious ramification is the establishment of the state of Israel. And that means that because it is a physical state, it does not mean that it is diametrically opposed to spiritualism, but just the opposite. It's a manifestation of spiritualism, and spiritualism and materialism go together. And that's the main thing. And coming from America and a world of materialism, where I love materialism, and being told that materialism is bad, and then, like, I get this idea that I'm bad, and I say, well, I don't want to be bad. And then all of a sudden you come to Rav Kook's philosophy, and it's so redeeming. Oh, I'm not bad. I just might be a little too much materialistic, but I just, infuse it and sublimate it with spiritualism, and then I'm okay.
It's amazing. Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I think for today's world, I think people can really relate to that. Okay, let's jump over to Abulafia. You are writing this book. You are doing the translation. I understand that you've traveled to do this extensive research. So how did you connect the writings of Abulafia and then decide I'm going to invest, all of my experience and my knowledge and my connections into this project?
Okay, so it's coming from a place that's really going to sound flaky. And I want to explain that, like, I'm a real human being, and that I eat, drink, and uh, I'm coming in a real solid place. And Abulafia offers a methodology to revive prophecy. And it's something that's found in the prophets itself, and that we don't believe that prophecy ended and it's just going to stay that way. But in the end of days, prophecy will be revived. We also have traditions that there were not only the 48 prophets that are found in the Bible and in the scriptures, in the Nach, but we have uh, myriads. It brings that there were hundreds of thousands of prophets. They weren't written down because they weren't relevant. And we see, for instance, that King Saul went to Samuel initially not to get information about rectifying the kingdom of Israel, but he had lost his donkeys and was wondering where they could be. And just that's what you would do for a prophet. So they had local prophets that would just tell people how to find the car keys. And this is something that is a talent that exists or existed, and I believe can be renewed, as grand as that vision sounds.
And I think obviously with your book being the translation and people not having to work to understand all of these words and it's in the language that they can get, then we can really have almost like chavrusa type action happening, right? Different groups learning together, and then we can take away even more from these teachings,
Well, I would love to just say, yes, of course, now it's accessible and everybody can just
right?
be a prophet, and then you can go to Vegas with this book and make a million. But it's not a simple process, and that it's a very involved, overwhelming, life-encompassing process, that if a person enhances his intuition and inkling, that's already something good. And it's also a very I don't know what it is, fickle and deceiving process, because you're talking about your imagination, and you're developing your imagination and your intuition. And these are things that are, imagination. You can now dream about a flying hippopotamus in this room. And it doesn't mean that there really is a flying hippopotamus in this room. But you can also dream that the angel who is teaching Torah is also in this room. And I believe, as a religious Jew, that he's in this room, even if I'm not able to interface with him. And with your imagination, you can imagine both of them. You can imagine the hippo and you can imagine the angel, and one is really there and one is not. And it's very tricky to really know how to tune in your imagination so that you'll be able to see the angel and not the hippo.
It's so interesting. This has made me think when you start talking about imagination and the things that are in the room. Jason, we've talked a lot on Beit Abulafia about meditation and improvisation and musical aspects, and how what this does to our brain, to sort of all these things that we're learning, bring it all home and make it relatable to us, that we can implement different tactics in our lives today. So talk a little bit about how, sort of springboarding off this imagination aspect that Rabbi Samson just shared with us, the musical and the improvisation and the meditation pieces that you've taught us as well here.
That's a great question, Shoshana. I mean, I think that perfectly segues into the idea that I've really enjoyed the music. I think it makes Abulafia safe, but it's not the complete picture of Abulafia. So I love the music and permutations. I think it opens up new ways of thinking. They have this term called new neural pathways, which actually I really like that phrase. The mind sees things differently. That's what I love about Abulafia. You can get in sort of a rut in how you look at religion or God or yourself. And he says, well, let's just turn it on its head and rethink the whole thing. Well, so what I love about Rabbi Samson is he says, well, we're going to get into the actual teachings and we're going to actually study the actual meditation. Here's what I think is a safety valve on that, which is let's really look at our imagination and let's just filter it and continue to question what's going on. Sometimes when I see other meditation groups, it seems to get very romantic and people have soul flights and things like that. But and that may or may not happen with Abulafia, but I just want to highlight the point that Rabbi Samson's saying, which is let's still stay critical and question our imagination and keep it in boundaries, because Abulafia to me is the most imaginative or the most focused on letting the imagination be developed as a skill. But we have to really keep it in the boundaries of, again, we're people and so that's what I think is so great about what Rabbi Samson is doing, is that for me, the music has really made it nice and safe, but I still want to study Abulafia, and I really love the guardrails he puts on it.
Okay, good. So let's talk about that, Rabbi, please. Thank you, Jason. What would you say you're envisioning when your next book, the translation of Abulafia, comes out, and understanding that the process is difficult and it is challenging? How are you seeing readers engaging with your words? And is it in groups? Is it in schools? Is it one-on-one? What are you looking like you want people to gain, and how, from your book?
So I see that there are going to be different levels of engagement in the Abulafia meditation. Uh, the prescription for being a prophet is just so overwhelming, and all of the prerequisites that are necessary are just so life invasive that I don't see it as a mass movement to go all the way. Let's just become prophets and compete with Isaiah. I don't see that happening. I mean, I do see that happening, but I don't see that happening for the masses. And someone has to be dedicated 24/7 with all of his might, with all of his life, and he just has to think about God. And uh, there's an interesting story I heard about Rabbi Aaron Lichtenstein after Tisha B'Av, that he didn't eat for a whole day, but you're also not allowed to learn for a whole day on Tisha B'Av. And as soon as Tisha B'Av was over, he ran to the study hall to learn. And he said, I can't believe it. I wasn't learning for 24 hours. I have to learn something. And that was much more important to him than eating. So a person has to be something like that in order just to have the basic personality that he's going to start. And until you're there, you're not really going to be able to go all the way. Together with that, I see that even a minor engagement in Abulafia is worthwhile, and that everyone has intuition. Women have more intuition than men, and their intuition can be enhanced very often in Western civilization. Intuition is scoffed upon, and women are taught to disregard their intuition and to be more practical and sensical. And very often, the intuition is much more. Maybe I'll tell you a personal story. When I
Please.
made schools, I learned in Merkaz Arab for years on end, but I never really learned how to make a school, and that's not one of the things in the curriculum. We didn't learn fundraising. We didn't learn administration. We didn't learn how to fire and hire staff. And I decided that I wanted to go around the world and just see the 10 best schools in the world. So I went to Singapore, and they say maybe the best school in the world is the American school in Singapore. So we decided to go there and see it. And we talked to the supervisor. The supervisor was taken from an oil company in Dubai. And we asked him how he hires teachers. And he said that he works on himself really hard to overcome the first 30 seconds of impression and have an even-handed interview. And I thought about that, and I thought that my best talent that I have is my 30-second intuition, and that I would just not do myself service, and that even though I went to learn what the best school in the world does, I never implemented that. And I have, like, I don't know if it's a 99% or 100% success rate in hiring staff and principals and teachers. And my first 30 seconds is not wrong. So I think that that's a talent that I wouldn't suggest trying to overcome and just use intellectual facilities, but if you have an intuition, learn. Again, it's tricky, and that you have to learn what's a true intuition, what's not, when it works, when it doesn't, and you have to use your intelligence in order to keep it in check.
That's fantastic. Thank you. Because Jason, as we do on these calls, we try to find the takeaways from the guests that we're having a chat with and make them practical for those of us here that are learning with everyone. So if we're talking about intuition, Jason, can you maybe think of some other things that we can really bring down to our level that's going to enable us to take all this in and implement it somehow in our lives?
That's another great question. I was actually thinking about that when Rabbi Samson was talking, that to me, Abulafia uniquely, I mean this not in a direct comparison, but like Home Depot. I think of Abulafia as Home Depot. Here's all the tools of spirituality. Take what you can use, develop certain skills and intuition, but please don't call yourself an Abulafian. I love that he doesn't have a path to join. He just says, here are the tools that I use to achieve prophecy. And as Rabbi Samson said, maybe you can use it to talk to people better, have better listening skills. But I think as you do Sarufim, this idea of combination of letters, and we'll ask Rabbi Samson a little bit more about that in terms of the meditation. But I think the what I gained from Abulafia that's unique, and that we're honing in on, is that there may be a future Judaism that's, I wouldn't say non-denominational, but just says, here are the skills and tools to develop your unique path. Don't leave Am Yisrael. I mean, be part of a collective, but here's an individual path. So I think that is a very unique piece of it. And we'll hear more about the Sarufim, the combinations, but I think that part of the meditation is so unique.
Okay, we jumped ahead to the end, Rabbi. Let's back up a little bit to the beginning of your process of working on translating this book. And as you're going through everything you've done to create this, how would you say it's impacted your life? Was there anything surprising that you uncovered as you were doing all your research, something that enhanced, something you weren't expecting, any or all of the above?
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, that's a big one too. They're all big because you, like, you're
Uh,
amazing.
well, I'll tell you, I'll share a very interesting thing that I found, and that I went through, I don't know, myriads of, every day I go through search machines trying to analyze what Abulafia is saying and try to have comparative either manuscripts or books or concepts, and try to see what he says. And of everything, of all of these, I don't know if there are hundreds of thousands already of sources, I'd like to mention one very interesting story from Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik, the master of the man of halacha, a man who was very much with 2 feet on the ground, the realist, the scientist, philosopher, very, very concrete. So he brings down an interesting story that when he was a child, there wasn't enough room in his father's house, and he would give a shiur in Rambam every night to great scholars, and he was only a 6-year-old little boy, and he couldn't understand what was going on, but he could only understand that it was about the Rambam, and that there was a question on the Rambam, and that it was his father's job to vindicate the Rambam. And he imagined that the Rambam was sitting on his bed, and every time his father would answer the questions on the Rambam would smile. And occasionally, it didn't happen very often. Well, when I forgot an important piece, and when he would smile, he would run to his mother, and he would say, "Daddy just answered the Rambam, and there's no more question on the Rambam." And the mother said, "Oh, that's great, little Yosef Dov." And then he would come back to bed. So occasionally, his father was not able to answer the Rambam, and he was just left with a question. And he saw that the Rambam, who was sitting on his bed, had a tear in his eye. And he would run to his mother, and he would say, "Mom, Dad wasn't able to," and he himself was in a state of distraught, and said, "Dad wasn't able to answer the Rambam." And his mother would console him and say, "That's all right. One day you will be a great Torah scholar, and you'll be able to answer the Rambam." So Rabbi Yosef Dov Halevi Soloveitchik continues in his story and he says, you shouldn't think that this was a little boy's imagination, because when I grew up, the only thing that changed is that I added to the Rambam Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam and the Ravid. And every time I learn a sugya, I sit at the table with all of these rabbis and have a discussion. And he writes, and it is not a figment of my imagination. He says that it is a real historical, psychological existence. Now, I don't know what he means when he says a real historical, psychological existence, but he felt that it was part and parcel of him throughout his life. And that's like really surprising, because he never shares that side of him. He's like a very real person who is, with his feet on the ground, answers halachic questions regarding this and that. And whoa, and all of a sudden he gives us a little peek into his inner room, that he sits there with Rabbeinu Tam and Rashi and that, and every time he prepares a sugya, he's preparing it with everybody using his historical, psychological imagination to project these rabbis and learn in that fashion.
It's amazing. I can fully understand why people are so drawn to you, Rabbi Samson. Your storytelling is so engaging and compelling, and you draw people in. We could listen to you all day. Everybody on the call is also super interested in this. We're getting some questions that they wanted to ask you, if that's okay with you. Jason, would you mind asking Len's question?
Yeah, we got a great question from Len Moskowitz. And I'll just kind of summarize, but Rabbi Samson, we've talked about this. Rabbi Chaim Vital, in his fourth parak that was censored for a long time, mentions Abulafia. So he wanted to know that connection. And then just overall, with how difficult Abulafia is to translate, what challenges have you met with that? And then if you could also mention Rav Gross's translation, Amnon Gross's translations.
Well, he doesn't have translations. He was the first one to actually
Right.
print it and put it into book. So I'll start with the first question regarding Sharei Kedusha. The greatest of all Kabbalists, and usually people heard of one Kabbalist, it's usually the Arizal. And the author of all of the books of the Arizal is Rabbi Chaim Vital. He's the one who actually wrote the books. And he also authored the book Sharei Kedusha, The Gates of Holiness. And it's the same kind of thing. It's a guide how to be a prophet. And the first three sections are just to get your show together. And maybe I'll mention it because it's really important. And it happens, unfortunately, frequently. You see, the imagination is a muscle, and that it's like a mirror. So if it's clean and clear, you're going to get a clear picture. But if there is a spot on the mirror and you see an image, you're going to think the image has acne or the black plague, and you're not going to get the image clear. So a necessary prerequisite is purifying yourself, which sounds like a simple thing. It's just, one theorem, purify yourself, big deal. It's years and years of work to really purify yourself and purify your imagination. And excuse me, with men, it's even more difficult because they have a natural tendency to fantasize. And a person has to have a clean imagination. If he doesn't, and he starts using these tools, so not only is he going to, he's not going to be able to interface with God, but he's going to see God as a Gila monster with pimples and all kinds of things that are scratching the mirror. And he's going to get a terrible idea. And also, there are negative, just like in this room, there are positive things. I hope there's nothing negative in this room, but if you've done something wrong, then something negative is going to be in the room. And then that negative thing, you can also attach to, and it likes to fool you and tell you all kinds of things. And even great rabbis were fooled. and it tells you things that are not necessarily true, and you start thinking that good is bad and bad is good, and you can go off the deep end in that way. Let me go back to your question about Sha'arei Kedusha. So the first 3 chapters are just to purify yourself, and it's similar to other books, and as a result, it was printed just like all of the other Musar books because it was fine. It was just character improvement. Now, starting from the middle of part 3 till the end of part 4, that's a different ball game. This is very heavy meditation, and it's hands-on how to be a prophet using Abulafia's methodology and other methodologies. And this was not printed. It was just now. In the last couple of years, they started printing Sha'arei Kedusha with the last part as well. And I believe that Amnon Gross was one of the people that was at the forefront of this idea. And because he printed Abulafia, so they say, well, I guess it's time to print the Sha'arei Kedusha. Now, what is the relationship? There are things that are found in Sha'arei Kedusha that are not found in the book of Abulafia, that are part and parcel of Abulafia's writings. I'll give you 2 examples. One of them is a list of angels. And Abulafia talks about permuting the 72-letter name. There's a 72-letter name of God. And each one of those letters is an angel. And when you do the meditation, you're supposed to recognize that this letter is an angel. And for instance, the first letter of the 72-letter name is a Vav. So the Vav is not just the Hebrew letter Vav, it's also the initial of an angel that begins with the letter Vav. Now, this list, who is it? There's no way of knowing. So the list is brought down in the 4th gate of Rabbi Chaim Vital's work, Sha'arei Kedusha. Another example is the interface of the 72 letter name or triplet letter name with the name of God, and that every name has to interface the name of God. Rabbi Abulafia does allude to it, hint to it. He doesn't say it specifically, and I think he doesn't want people to really know. And he doesn't really say it clearly. But in the Sha'arei Kedusha, we find exactly how the 3-letter names interface with the 4-letter name of God, something which is not found in Abulafia's text. Because of this, I believe that the book of Hayye Olam Ha Ba that Abulafia writes on how to procure prophecy had 2 parts, and that there was a written and an oral part that went together with the written. And he wrote the written so that there would be a basis, and the oral part was handed from student to student so that those who were worthy would be able to do it. And what we see in Sha'arei Kedusha are remnants of the oral tradition that were passed on from generation to generation. I'll just add one more point to that. Rabbi Amnon Gross told me of a tradition that he has that goes back 900 years to the time of Abulafia, which is an oral tradition that discusses the different breathing methods that a person should use for these meditations, something that is not brought down specifically in the book.
That is perfect. That was where we were going to go to next, Rabbi. We want to talk about the Abulafia meditation system. And Jason, I want you to jump in too, because we've talked often on this show about permutations and the combination of letters. So Rabbi, if you would start us off a little bit and share some of this meditation system with us, and then Jason kind of jump in with your experiences too, because this is really where it gets practical for those of us who are on here listening, because these are things that we can activate, and our readers and our viewers really enjoy how they can take all of these learnings and put it into their lives.
So first of all, the simplest thing to do is what is called stream of consciousness writing. And this is what Rabbi Abulafia mentions that you should do. And you should take a word, any word. It's better to do it in Hebrew, but you can even do it in English. And that you just begin to write it. Now, when I give to students this task, I do something before that and have them just write in their original writing. If they, like, for instance, I learned how to write in English, and even though now I've been working in Hebrew for 50 years, I should do this in English because it's the original script that I use. So that if I'm going to do stream of consciousness writing, I should do it in English. And you just start writing without periods, without capitals. You don't think of punctuation, and you just let your hand write. And then if after a sentence you say, well, I don't know, what should I write? Just let it write and let your hand bring it. And then when you do this, you'll access a deeper level of yourself, and you'll suddenly find that your subconscious is expressing itself through your hand. That's the first simplest stage, a stream of consciousness. Writing, anyone can do that. Anyone can access it and know things that he can do. If I'll reveal, when I do it, I get stuff that I didn't know I still have, and I sound like a 16-year-old in the 60s that is writing all kinds of things, and apparently it's still there someplace. And that when I do stream of consciousness writing in English, so that part of me that's apparently still there comes out.
This is such a good therapy session. These classes are. I have to say that I'm a writer, Rabbi, and my OCD in me I'd have to get over the hump of no periods and no capitalization before I could like get into the actual act of doing the things. But I can see how it would be therapeutic and revealing for people who actually give it a sincere go. Jason, can you share some of the meditation techniques that we've talked about and that you've experienced?
Well, I would say, just like Rabbi Samson mentioned, I would do this with the guitar. And I was at a certain level of music ability. And then I discovered Abulafia. And so instead of, for me, thinking about scales and being good at music, I just did permutations. I just did playing the melody this way, play it that way, try all different ways of playing it. And that stream of consciousness does come out through the music. So it is really amazing to think, well, now maybe I can apply this to things in my life with actual physical writing. So it's been a really great experience for me to think about, well, I could translate music improvisation to just writing out ideas, and I could go deeper into my subconscious. So everything to me has just been an enhancement of that initial discovery of permutations by Abulafia using music. And so I think my question to Rabbi Samson would be, where does the moving of either English letters or Hebrew letters come into play at this point?
So the next stage, after a person has practiced stream of consciousness writing, I would suggest writing his name in Hebrew. And usually most names are 2, 3, or 4 letters. You can also do 5. If you do 5, it gets a little more complicated. And you start doing permutations. And you do a permutation, for instance, if I'll take the name David, my own name. So my own name, it's only 3 letters and 2 of them are the same. So I'm not going to have a lot of choices of the permutations. But I will have, for instance, a permutation if I do it, and I'll write, instead of Dalid Vav Dalid, which is David, I'll write Dalid Dalid Vav, and that spells a different word, and it means his uncle. And that already will send me in a different thought. And I'm going to write David, and I'm going to write his uncle, and I'm going to start thinking about my uncle. I'll say, well, I'm also an uncle, and about my nephews, my nieces, and what does it mean? And then if I do another permutation, it'll say Vidad, which means also a nipple. What does that mean? And like, just things that are out of nowhere, and you start thinking, well, is that part of me? Is that not part of me? Why is that so essential? Now, if you do it with a 4-letter name that has different letters, you're going to get 24 different words. And with 24 different words, you can do a lot. If you have a 5-letter name, you're going to get 120 different words. And they're going to spark your imagination, and it will spark your inspiration. And that a person who does this when he's in a state of holiness and he's looking for inspiration from God, and all of a sudden his imagination is being sparked by all of these new words. So it's a methodology for bringing a person part and parcel into the world of inspiration.
Amazing. Jason, did we want to chat about a follow-up of some sort before we
Well,
ask our couple final questions here?
yeah, I just wanted to say we're up at about 45 minutes. We can go for another 10 or 15 depending on how the conversation goes. But what we wanted to ask Rabbi Samson is, which specific book of Abulafia are you translating, and what is that timeline for the public to at some point be able to access it?
Well, again, asking me to talk about my books is like asking a grandmother if she has pictures of her grandchildren. And I'm not sure 15 minutes is going to be enough if I start talking about that. But it worked out. I thought that it would be a very simple thing because it's a small book. It's only 100 pages the way it's printed. And I thought it would take me a few months and I would just translate it. But apparently I got carried away. Now I have 4 volumes. The first volume is just a Hebrew text because I found that the text differs from manuscript to manuscript, and we're talking about something that was written 900 years ago. So the more modern manuscripts are, they added a little bit of their own and they subtracted a little bit. So I went back to look at manuscripts, then I realized that not everything is online. So I started going around the world to look at the other manuscripts, and I found a very good manuscript in England. They have a couple good manuscripts. There's also a very good manuscript in Moscow. I did not go to Moscow, but it's online and it's available. And I put out an edition. It's not a scientific edition, but it's my rendition based on all the manuscripts, what I think is correct. And I didn't want to do a scientific edition because I thought it would be distracting and you just wouldn't be able to study it. Now, one of the most amazing things about it is that he wrote the book in a calligraphic style of circles and unusual circles. The book itself, the original manuscripts were written in circles, and that he hid parts of the meditation in the script and the calligraphy of the original manuscripts were naturally lost if you just print them in lines in a book. You have no idea what he's talking about, and some of the sentences are referring to the calligraphy, and you have no idea what he's talking about because if you don't have the calligraphy, it doesn't make sense. So what I did is I put the manuscripts through AI. I have 3 different manuscripts that I'm using because each one is not a complete manuscript of the whole book. And I put it through AI to clean it up and it'll be readable. So I have the calligraphic form of the manuscript in Hebrew, and I have a text which is based more or less, not exactly on these manuscripts because I do change them according to other manuscripts in the beginning so that a person will at least have a correct book. So that's volume 1. Do you still have patience to hear of the other volumes? Okay. Well, that's volume 1, which is simply a new, correct, pseudo-scientific edition of Abulafia. Now, the other volume is the first volume is more or less the first part of Abulafia, the book Hayye Olam Ha Ba. I started translating it. I got to 600 pages. And then after I got to 600 pages, I said, this is not going to work if, I'm only up to 1/3 of the book. So I'm going to have to turn it into volumes. And I decided to cut it. And the first part is more theoretical Abulafia concepts. The second volume is the second third of the book. And the second third of the book refers to hands-on meditative techniques. What do you do? And in that second part, in the first book also, I have certain meditations. I have the meditations that I discussed here, the early meditations, but the main meditations that he talks about in the book using the 72 triplet name. They're found in the second volume with a hands-on meditative guide. And that if a person wants to be a prophet, at just sitting at home, he can use my book, and he should be able to become a prophet in no time. And the third volume is the last part of the book where he deals with the other names of God, which are not the 72 triplet name. And I have an entire book on this last section, which are the other names of God. And the three of them, one is called Abulafia Explained, the middle is Abulafia Revealed, and the Hebrew is Abulafia Displayed, and the third volume is Abulafia Unlocked. So all four of them give person who's serious, the serious Abulafia reader, a way of accessing what's there.
Yeah, it's the complete picture of all the things. Also, you probably didn't know this about yourself, but you're a mind reader, because Jason was going to ask you about the calligraphy. So we are pleased that you shared that. Thank you. We're going to wrap up here in just a couple of minutes. We wanted to switch and ask you a different kind of question, if you don't mind, about Israel, since that is your home and we are all here doing what we can to help. Can you give us the state of Am Yisrael, what you're noticing there? Our family's actually, Jason's family and my family happened to be there this past summer. It was definitely a different feeling than I had ever experienced in the times I visited. I'm sure it was the same for Jason's family. Can you just sort of give us this message from Israel and what we can hear from your aspects being there right now?
Okay, but you have to realize that you're asking this fanatical Rabbi Cook rabbi for his perspective, and that's
Great.
the perspective you're going to get.
Do it. Yes, that's what we want.
I'll tell you, as a man of the Bible, I believe that God has a spoiler, and he tells us what the plan of the end of days is. And in the end of days, the entire land of Israel has to return to the Jewish people, and the entire Jewish people have to return to Israel. That's the final end game. We don't know that much about what happens in the middle, but what happened today seems like a giant step in the right direction. And the fact that Syria fell, and all of a sudden these Islamic people, whoa, sorry about that.
It's okay. It didn't come on our screen. You're good.
Give me a second.
No worries.
And
Technology is our best friend and our worst enemy sometimes.
oh, sorry, I'm back.
No, you're good.
Wait.
You were saying about Syria.
I apparently I'll try a last time here. Are you still there?
Yeah, we can still see you. So you're good even if you can't see yourself on your screen.
Okay, I'm good. So I'm sorry. I'll try
No
again.
worries.
So if this is the final goal, and there's no way that Israel would conquer Syria, Lebanon, or Jordan, because they are viable states that are members of the United Nations, and we abide by the laws of nations. And all of a sudden, it looks like this radical Islamic jihad force is taking over, and it looks like everybody will be really happy for Israel to take their place. And it seems like God is preparing the stage for reaching the biblical borders of the Euphrates and the Nile, as scary as that sounds. And I definitely see that this is what is unfolding. And I also see the rise of anti-Semitism in outside of Israel as part of this entire process, that it's time for the Jewish people to return to Israel, and it's time for Israel to return to the Jewish people.
Amen, amen, from your mouth. That would be lovely. Jason, would you like to wrap us up here? Rabbi Samson, you've been absolutely fantastic. I wish we had more time. Jason, hit us.
Well, with that, I would say, Shoshana, thank you for leading another very successful Beit Abulafia. This has been, I know between the both of us, we both know of everyone we've interviewed, this has been so aligned with the mission of Beit Abulafia. And we deeply appreciate all of our guests. But this has been quite a crowning moment for this program to have Rabbi Samson with us. So thank you, Rabbi Samson, for joining us. It's been quite a bracha. I'm seeing just a sort of applause in the chat box for people who really enjoyed this. So I wanted to thank Avi Solomon, Gidon, Ariel, I see joined, and my family, Avi Solomon. Thank you everyone for joining. We typically have 400 or 500 views after we've posted, but to have 8 or 10 people on a Sunday just speaks to the power of our guests and what we're doing. I want to say thank you to Rabbi Michal Bayo of the East Valley JCC for being our supporter for so many years. Thank you, Rabbi Bayo. Thank you, Shoshana Cenker. Thank you, Rabbi Samson. We had one last question for you, Rabbi Samson. Will you be teaching Abulafia online or in person in Jerusalem? What do you have plans for that?
I teach Abulafia on a personal basis. Like we also study together. And I'm available and I'm free, and anybody who's interested is welcome to contact me, and I'll be more than happy to teach at least what I can to anyone who is interested.
That is
Beautiful.
amazing and incredibly generous, and I'm sure people are going to take you up on that. That's amazing.
Yeah, if anybody would like contact information, Rabbi Samson, we give it now, or people could email me. Do you have any contact information you'd like to leave on the video, or should we just do that privately?
I am Rabbi Samson at Gmail, and anyone is welcome to contact me. I'm, not that on time, but within time, I answer mails, as you know. And
Yes.
eventually you'll get an answer from me.
Wonderful. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for your engagement. Once again, Rabbi Samson, thank you for your time. It's been a huge blessing. Wish everyone a Shavua Tov. And with that, I'll let Shoshana conclude the program.
Yeah, just the same. Thanks everybody for joining, Rabbi Samson. This was a true honor for us. You are incredible, and we look forward to diving into all of these volumes that you're going to be sharing with us soon. Jason, thank you. Michal Beo, everybody again. This is wonderful. This is such a good way to start the week. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank
Yeah,
you, and shalom to all of our viewers.
agreed.